Hello everyone. If you like this audiobook and want to listen to more, please consider subscribing. And if you like this video, like it as well, that it enjoy.
Talk to Haley and Alex. So, you agree to go out with Veronica just to avoid rejecting her in front of everyone. And now you want to break up with her because you can't stand her and she takes up your free time for video games? Haley asked, sitting on the edge of her bed and looking at Andrew, who was sitting beside her. After leaving Pip's house, Andrew went to his aunt and uncle's home for this important conversation with his cousin, Haley. He needed advice on how to break up with Veronica discreetly. Exactly, Andrew said, nodding. Haley stared at him silently for a few seconds before she couldn't hold it in any longer and burst into uncontrollable laughter. It's not funny, Andrew said, slightly indignant. For him, there was nothing amusing about the endless phone calls with Veronica or the dates. I should have guessed you said yes because of that, Haley said, still laughing. I worried for nothing, she added under her breath, though Andrew heard her. Worried about what? Andrew asked. Oh, nothing. Why don't you just end the relationship? It's been 2 weeks. It wouldn't seem strange if you did, Haley said quickly, stopping her laughter and changing the subject. Yeah, I know, but I don't want to be the one to end it, you know. I already went out of my way to minimize Veronica's emotional damage by not rejecting her in front of everyone. If I'm the one to break up with her, she'll still be sad and her ego will take a hit, Andrew explained. To him, it would end up being similar to rejecting her publicly, though less extreme. Sometimes I forget how mature you are, Haley said, looking at Andrew with a small smile. Mature, please. That's not maturity. That's just fear of taking responsibility for other people's feelings, Alex said from her bed, looking up from her book. Shut up, Alex. You're the last person who should talk about other people's feelings. Andrew is trying to be considerate, Haley snapped, glaring at her with a frown, clearly annoyed by her interruption. Considerate, agreeing to date someone just to avoid hurting their feelings in front of everyone, then not wanting to be the one to break up because that might hurt them too. Yeah, super considerate, Alex said sarcastically. The best way to handle this is to treat her like an adult. Tell her the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. It's not your job to carry the weight of her emotions, Alex added, adjusting her glasses. Mind your own business, Haley growled, grabbing a pillow and hurling it forcefully at Alex, who failed to react in time and took the hit square in the face. Don't throw pillows at people's faces, Alex exclaimed indignantly, tossing the pillow back awkwardly. Haley dodged the pillow easily, but it ended up hitting Andrew, who was too lost in thought to notice what was happening. Ha, your strength is pathetic. Instead of studying so much, you should work on your coordination, Haley said mockingly, crossing her arms with a smug smile. Maybe Alex is right, Andrew said, setting the pillow aside. Haley turned to him with wide eyes. Seriously, Alex's advice on girlfriends and boyfriends? She asked, unable to believe what she was hearing. Alex, on the other hand, smiled smugly. I knew someone in this family would eventually recognize my wisdom. Though, of course, not everyone is smart enough to do so, she added, glancing pointedly at Haley with the last remark. No, you're not doing that, Andrew, Haley suddenly said, placing her hands on Andrew's cheeks and forcing him to look her directly in the eyes. I'm not. Why not? It seems like a reasonable solution, Andrew said, blinking. He thought about what Pippa had told him earlier that day, that he was kind to everyone. She had meant it as a compliment, but taking it to an extreme might be counterproductive. Could it be that always trying to avoid hurting others was causing more problems than it solved? Agreeing to go out with Veronica just to avoid rejecting her in front of everyone, enduring long conversations and dates that took away time for his own interests. All because he wanted to be considerate or kind. In the end, the one most negatively affected was himself. I can't always be kind to everyone, Andrew said, looking at Haley, who was still gripping his cheeks tightly. Well, it seems he's finally understanding that you can't save the world by being the knight in shining armor 24/7. Welcome to the realistic side of life, cousin, Alex said in a mildly sarcastic tone. Shut up, Alex, Haley shot back, glaring daggers at her. She wasn't about to let Andrew follow Alex's advice. He came to her for help, not Alex, and she wanted to be the one he thanked. Andrew came to me for advice, not you, Haley added, letting go of Andrew, who sighed in relief as his cheeks were finally free. So, what's your advice? Andrew asked. You don't have to break up with Veronica directly. What you need to do is, make her realize you're not as interested as she thinks. That way, she'll decide to end the relationship herself, Haley replied with a confident smile. And how exactly am I supposed to do that? Andrew asked. It's simple. First, respond to her messages, but without much enthusiasm. Be short, but not rude. Reply with things like, okay, sure, or, alright. Nothing more. If she wants to call you, make excuses to avoid it. And for every 3 dates, cancel 2 or 1, saying you're busy, tired from training, or something like that, Haley explained, raising a finger as if giving a lecture. That sounds a little cruel, Andrew commented, tilting his head. It's not, Haley insisted. You're not being mean to her, you're just showing that you're not as interested. Trust me, she'll realize soon enough that it doesn't make sense to stay with you if you're not showing the same enthusiasm. And what if she takes it the wrong way anyway? Andrew asked, still hesitant. Haley placed a hand on his shoulder. She won't. Veronica's smart. Sure, she might feel a little disappointed, but trust me, it's better than going down the direct breakup route, like Alex suggests. Why would breaking up directly be worse? Andrew asked. If you break up directly, you'll have to talk to her face to face. That's inevitable. And, Andrew, in that conversation, she's going to ask you why you're leaving her. At that moment, there are a lot of ways things could go wrong, Haley explained, and Andrew saw her point. In that talk, he might accidentally say something clumsy that would make her realize he agreed to date her just to avoid rejecting her in front of everyone. If that happened, it would be the worst-case scenario, as Veronica would figure out that the relationship started out of pity or social pressure. On the other hand, if he followed Haley's plan, Veronica would naturally realize that things weren't working and decide to end it herself. Plus, she wouldn't feel humiliated or deceived. Alright, I'll do it, Andrew said, nodding. Great. In 10 days, she'll break up with you, and you'll be back to your routine, Haley said with a smile. Isn't she your friend? You shouldn't be happy about this, Alex chimed in snidely, once again butting into the conversation. Haley shot her a murderous glare but said nothing. Time to leave, Andrew thought, glancing at the time on his phone. Andrew said goodbye to his cousins and the rest of the family. It was late, and he needed to get home. Haley walked him to the door. Oh, one more thing, Haley said, grabbing Andrew's wrist just as he was about to leave. What? Haley hesitated for a moment, biting her lips slightly before speaking. Well, if you're really going to follow my plan, there's something I forgot to mention. What is it? Andrew asked. You should cut back on kisses and displays of affection with Veronica, Haley said, crossing her arms. No holding hands, no spontaneous kisses. You know, so she starts noticing that things are changing and picks up on the signs. It's part of the process. Really, won't it cause more trouble if it's that obvious? Andrew asked. Haley knew that Veronica had already kissed Andrew, who, in his role as her boyfriend, had felt obligated to kiss her or hold her hand. Otherwise, his lie might unravel, and Veronica might even assume he was gay. To avoid that, Andrew had decided to kiss her and hold her hand. If you keep acting like the perfect boyfriend, she'll never realize something's wrong. Besides, it's not like you're pretending, you're just not interested in her that way, right? Haley said. Makes sense. Alright, I'll do it, Andrew nodded, finally saying goodbye to Haley and heading home. He's gone, Haley thought as she closed the door, letting out a heavy sigh. She headed back to her room, only to find Alex watching her with a faint, teasing smile. What? Haley asked, her tone sharp and impatient, a stark contrast to how she'd spoken to Andrew earlier. I have to admit, I'm genuinely surprised, Alex remarked, closing her book with a deliberate gesture. I thought that, with how annoyed you've been about Andrew's relationship, you would have supported the advice for him to break up with Veronica directly, she added with a sly smile. She and their mom had noticed Haley's mood shift ever since Andrew got a girlfriend, though Haley wasn't exactly known for being in the best mood to begin with. Haley frowned, clearly confused and visibly irritated. What are you implying? Why would you say that? What's wrong with my plan? Nothing, technically, except that it's way longer and more dramatic than necessary. If you'd just told him to break up with Veronica, this whole thing would be resolved by tomorrow. Don't get me wrong, I just thought you'd want this relationship to end as quickly as possible, Alex explained. Well, you thought wrong, Haley said, sitting on her bed, signaling she was done with the conversation. But Alex wasn't. Her goal was to get under her sister's skin. I thought you were upset because Andrew got a girlfriend, and you seemed so happy when he told you it was a fake relationship, Alex said. That has nothing to do with it. All I want is to help Andrew. He asked me for help because he doesn't want to hurt Veronica. That's why I suggested a more subtle, less aggressive approach, Haley explained, trying to keep her composure. So, it has nothing to do with Andrew being in a relationship and you, well, you know, being jealous, Alex said, tilting her head slightly as she scrutinized Haley. I am not jealous. That's ridiculous. We're cousins, Haley exclaimed indignantly, a blush quickly spreading across her cheeks. Yes, cousins. Andrew is adopted and joined the family when you were 5, Haley. You don't even share blood or any formal relation. He's more like a childhood friend, Alex said with an amused smile, clearly enjoying how much she was irritating Haley. That has nothing to do with it. Haley shot back quickly, her blush deepening as she pointed a finger at Alex. Andrew is like my older brother, okay. I've known him since we were kids, and I've always seen him that way. So, stop making things up, she added, storming out of the room. She knew she couldn't win this argument, and the last thing she wanted was to give any further explanations. Alex stayed on the bed, watching Haley leave with a satisfied smile on her face. 20 comments 0 vote. Pippa's invitation. Friday, September 27th. Almost 2 weeks had passed since Andrew had met at Pip's house to lay the groundwork for their programming project, a video game, Flappy Bird. A game Andrew remembered vividly from his past life, although in this timeline, it would still be 5 years before anyone even thought of creating it. However, in this reality, the creators would be him and Pippa. Andrew felt no guilt about claiming the idea. The possibility of future profits was worth the price, which wasn't all that high. He didn't need to work 24/7 or invest massive amounts of money. The development of Flappy Bird was going smoothly. In just 2 weeks since they began, Andrew and Pippa had made significant progress compared to the rest of the class, where most were still stuck on more basic tasks, except for Leonard and Howard, though their focus was on creating a more complex and scientific tool, not a video game. Professor Smith, who spent time reviewing each group's progress, couldn't hide his surprise at how far Pip and Andrew had come. Unlike Leonard and Howard, they had a clear idea of what they wanted to create. During one of the classes, Professor Smith observed the code on Pippa's screen closely and nodded with admiration. It's clear you've had a solid vision from the start, he commented with an approving smile. Well, the idea for the game is entirely Andrew's. He already knew exactly what he wanted to do, said Pippa, adjusting some gravity parameters at that moment. Oh, that's great, Andrew. Do you want to be a video game developer as well as a quarterback? Asked the professor with a slight smile, glancing at Andrew, who was known for football. However, he hadn't yet taken off in the high school team since he was still a backup. Video games are just a hobby, football comes first, Andrew replied with a peculiar smile. His programming skills were slightly above average, and the idea for Flappy Bird wasn't even his. The project's progress was due to several key factors. He knew exactly how he wanted the game to work, and Pippa's programming skills were far beyond what was expected of a beginner. Her ability to learn quickly and turn Andrew's ideas into code was impressive, while he, with his prior knowledge of the game, acted as a guide to avoid mistakes and save a lot of time. Moreover, they didn't limit themselves to working during school programming classes. They met on Saturdays or Sundays at Pippa's house to continue developing the game. They got along surprisingly well, considering that just a few weeks ago, they were little more than classmates. The last class on Friday was programming. Once the bell rang, signaling the end, Pippa and Andrew started packing up their things. Andrew had practice later, a lighter, more tactical session, as his team was playing an away game at another school's field that night. Do you realize that if we keep this pace, we'll have the game ready in 6 weeks? Pippa said as she closed her backpack and slung it over her shoulder, looking at Andrew. The professor had given them a 10-week deadline to complete the project, expecting something simple, a basic tool or a straightforward video game. However, Flappy Bird, despite its minimalist appearance, had a level of complexity that placed it far above the expectations for a group of 9th graders just starting out in programming. This project was an excellent opportunity for Pippa's academic record. Yeah, when we launch it to the world, we'll be teenage millionaires, Andrew said with a faint smile, already imagining the money coming their way. The downside would be the legal process, given they were minors, but luckily, his father was a lawyer. I didn't know you cared so much about money, Pippa said, raising an eyebrow as she looked at him. You can't deny that a nice check also helps keep morale high, Andrew said with a shrug. True, Pippa agreed with a nod. Neither of them was passionate about programming or game development. Pippa did it mostly because she enjoyed studying a bit of everything, and Andrew, more than creating video games, enjoyed playing them, or, in some cases, recording them to upload to YouTube. See you, Andrew said, waving goodbye to Pippa. Wait, Pippa said, grabbing his arm. What's up? Andrew asked, curious. I wanted to ask, Pippa began, her tone different than usual, hesitant. She went silent for a second, her mind going blank before her thoughts swarmed in. Come on, Pip, I've been preparing for this for the past 2 days. It's not that hard, just say it, she scolded herself in her head, a habit she had whenever she got nervous. After the game, I'm hosting a small get-together at my home, it's not a big group. I just wanted to know if you'd like to come, she finally said, looking at Andrew with nervousness she tried her best to hide. Oh, Andrew said, unsure how to respond. Oh, Pippa repeated, thinking her invitation was about to be rejected. It's fine if you don't want to, Pippa quickly added, noticing Andrew taking a few seconds to answer. No, Andrew exclaimed suddenly, startling Pippa, who flinched in surprise. I'll go. I was just wondering if Howard and Leonard could come too, Andrew said, trying to justify his earlier hesitation. This wasn't entirely untrue. He'd had a conversation with Howard during one of their late-night gaming or movie marathons, where Howard had begged, practically pleaded, that if Andrew ever went to a party with girls, he had to invite him. That's what friends do, according to Howard. Pippa glanced toward Leonard and Howard, who were standing by the door a few meters away, watching them. They seemed to be waiting for Andrew. Sure, they can come. They'll get along fine with everyone else, Pippa replied. Her friends were pretty normal, not the stereotypical popular crowd, but also not as geeky as Howard, Leonard, or even Andrew himself. Great, see you there, Andrew said with a smile. Great, see you, good luck with the game, Pippa said before quickly leaving the classroom. What just happened? Andrew thought, scratching his head as he walked over to Leonard and Howard. Pippa's behavior had been so strange, and even his own felt off since they started talking about hanging out later. Happy talking to your new girlfriend, Andy? Howard asked in an envious tone. Shut up, she's not my girlfriend, and call me Andrew. It's weird when you call me Andy, Andrew said, rolling his eyes. Break up with Veronica, and you already have another girl. It must be great being a popular athlete, Howard said, stroking his chin. Maybe he really should try the training Andrew was always pushing him to do. But he shook his head. He wasn't ready to endure that much physical pain, and besides, his coordination was terrible. Sure, he could improve his physique, but his lack of coordination was a disaster. He'd never played sports except during PE classes, and the thought of catching balls, passing, and moving fluidly on the field terrified him. He was clumsy, lacked agility, and his poor coordination made him feel like a fish out of water. As for Howard's comment, Andrew wasn't with Veronica anymore. Just as Haley had predicted, Veronica broke up with him in 10 days, actually, it was 9. And Andrew noticed she seemed to move on much faster than he expected. Veronica's popularity skyrocketed after becoming the girl who dumped Andrew. She climbed the school's social ladder and landed a spot among the most popular cheerleaders. Andrew couldn't help but laugh to himself. Veronica seemed far happier now than she ever had while they were dating. Teenagers, after all, cared more about popularity and image. And Veronica, apparently, had prioritized image over a real connection. Andrew didn't mind one bit. He was perfectly fine with everything being superficial. As for his image and popularity, he couldn't care less. He'd gladly bury it. All he wanted was to play football and video games. Being single is great, Howard. One day, you will understand, Andrew said with a relaxed smile. Now he was a free man, able to dedicate his time to football, video games, and everything else he loved. God gives bread to those who have no teeth, Howard said indignantly. It's way too early for you to pull out your religious sayings, Howard, Leonard cut in with a mocking smile. Did you hear that from your mom or something? Leonard was a teenager entirely focused on science. His mother didn't believe in any religion, so he'd grown up in an environment completely detached from those concepts and even viewed them with disapproval. Anyway, Pippa invited me to her house for a get-together with her friends. You're both invited too, Andrew said. We'll finally get to meet Lauren and Karen, Howard exclaimed with a smile. Andrew looked at him with a strange expression. How do you know those two names? He asked, a bit confused. Those were the names of Pippa's best friends. Andrew, having visited Pippa's house several times, had heard them mentioned in conversations and eventually remembered them. But Howard wasn't friends with Pippa. Oh, that was easy, Howard said with a proud smile. I looked them up on Facebook. Seriously? Andrew asked, not understanding Howard's proud grin. Yeah, you know, since I figured you'd eventually follow through on the promise we made before, I knew I'd end up meeting her friends. And, well, it's always good to be prepared, Howard replied. Whoa, that's very smart of you, Mr. Stalker. I'm sure the girls will be thrilled when they find out you thoroughly browsed their profiles, Leonard remarked, and Andrew laughed. They'll never know if you two don't say anything, Howard said shamelessly. See you at the game tonight. Be there so we can go to Pippa's house together, Andrew said, saying goodbye to the two as he hurried off to practice. 26 comments 0 vote. Nutritional jokes. We must play like we did in the first game of the season. We must crush them, exclaimed a middle-aged man, moderately muscular and sporting a large mustache, as he looked at the group of teenagers in front of him. His name is David, and he is the coach of the high school football team that Andrew belongs to. Currently, Andrew was in the last practice session before tonight's game. The Friday practices before a game are supposed to focus on tactics and be less intense than earlier practices for obvious reasons. However, they had just endured an intense training session that left everyone sweaty, muddy, and out of breath, except for Andrew, whose superior physical condition was thanks to both his discipline and his genetics. As for tactics, they hadn't touched on any of that. They didn't review strategies, analyze tonight's opponent, or create a game plan. It was all motivational talk, which Andrew found to be empty words, since motivation alone wouldn't win them the game. So far, the team had played 2 games. The first was a friendly match that Andrew's team won, although neither he nor his friends were starters. The seniors and the coach celebrated that victory as if they had just won the damn Super Bowl. The second game was last Friday. It was the season opener, an important, significant match. However, as Andrew had predicted, his team lost by more than 14 points. A blowout. The only ones who managed to secure starting positions were Kevin and a guy named Ralph, who had played with Andrew in middle school. Ralph's position was on the defensive team. Beyond that, no one else had managed to replace any of the main seniors, no matter how much better they performed in practice, twice, 3 times, or even more. Reggie and the others were running out of patience. If they lost another game, it would be very difficult to maintain a good record and qualify for the playoffs, let alone dream about becoming district champions. Still, despite the beating they had taken, the incompetent coach didn't make any changes to the starting lineup. He kept Jason and his friends in their positions. Andrew had expected this. He had already noticed the coach's incompetence. The man would arrive late to practices, just like Jason. The training sessions were lackluster, and tactics or strategy. Those words didn't seem to exist in David's brain. It's what I expected from a school like this, thought Andrew. His school didn't have a competitive football program. He knew that, after all, the coach was related to one of the players. That kind of thing didn't happen in schools that took football seriously. Andrew, because of his record in middle school, his 70-yard pass, leading an underdog team to 2 district championships, and being named MVP in both tournaments, had received offers from several high schools in California with competitive programs, but he turned them down. He wanted a bigger challenge. In his past life, he had attended one of those schools with a great football program. He had learned and improved a lot, surrounded by teammates and coaches at his level. But now, his skill level was far beyond what it had been back then. On the other hand, if he could lead this team to success, his fame and reputation would grow exponentially, attracting the attention of college scouts. Besides, he wasn't alone. He had rigorously trained Regis, Archie, Kevin, and the others so he wouldn't be surrounded by incompetence. He knew football was a team sport. No matter how good or talented he was, he couldn't win a state high school championship on his own, surrounded by weak players. This wasn't the same as middle school or elementary school. I said we must crush them, David exclaimed, noticing that no one was motivated by his speech. We'll crush them, Jason and his friends said in unison, their tone far from enthusiastic. Today, they were facing a team better than last week's, and they were in the same condition as in the previous game. Andrew, Archie, Reggie, and the other freshmen stood at the back, staying silent. That's the spirit, that's all. See you at the buses in a few hours, said David, wrapping up the practice. Let's go, Andrew said to Reggie and the others, who were frozen in place, each lost in their own thoughts. The others followed Andrew. The group walked to the locker room in silence. After changing and cleaning up, they headed to a restaurant to uphold their pre-game ritual. But this time, spirits were low, and almost no one spoke. They had never been in a situation like this before. They were always starters and winners. Something similar had happened during their first year of middle school, but even though they didn't win the district championship, they still secured starting positions and finished second. A young woman approached their table. She was the waitress who always served them. She had light brown hair tied up in a messy ponytail, lively amber eyes, and a relaxed demeanor. She wore an olive green shirt and a black apron with her name on the upper corner, Olivia. Hey, guys, what's with the long faces? Olivia said, greeting them with familiarity and enthusiasm. Andrew raised a hand in a brief wave, forcing a smile. The mood's down, we're still sad benchwarmers, he joked, trying to lighten the atmosphere. Benchwarmers, so what? Remember, Andrew, even the greatest started on the bench, she said, winking at him, trying to lift his spirits. She's right, Andrew said, glancing at his friends, but they didn't seem very convinced. Well, let's cheer you guys up with some food. The usual for you, Andrew, Olivia asked with a warm smile. Yeah, thanks, Olivia, Andrew replied, unsurprised that she already knew. Olivia nodded and pulled out her notepad. Looking at the others, she asked, and you guys? What do you want? I'll have the usual too, Steve said, staring at the table and playing with the napkins. The only thing that could lift his mood was eating, a lot. Steve, the usual. I don't think I've memorized your order yet, but if you tell me now, I promise to remember it next time, Olivia said, raising an eyebrow. Wow, favoritism much. You only remember Andrew's, Steve said indignantly. He's the real food lover of the group, not Andrew, who always orders the same thing and only cares about food in terms of calorie count, protein intake, and maintaining a strict, balanced diet. Andrew calculated his macros with near-scientific precision, always prioritizing practicality over taste. It's because Andrew is predictable. Chicken breast, Caesar salad, whole grain bread, and water. Always the same. It's easy to remember, Olivia explained. That's not predictable. That's discipline, Andrew interjected, defending his choice. Discipline is just a fancy word for boring, Steve replied with a mocking smile. Food is meant to be enjoyed. I'll have a cheeseburger with extra cheese and large fries. No calorie counting for me. Did you forget it's supposed to be a light meal? Kevin asked. Yeah, Steve, or are you planning to roll across the field instead of running? Reggie added with a smirk that made some of the boys chuckle. That's it, teasing Steve helps lighten the mood, Andrew thought, as if he'd just had a revelation. Why worry, I'm going to be on the bench anyway. So let me enjoy my burger in peace, Steve retorted. You're right about one thing, Steve, you'll be on the bench. But if they put you in the game, I hope those fries and burgers give you enough energy to run more than 2 meters without needing a break. You know, the combination of saturated fats and processed proteins in that kind of food isn't exactly what your body needs for optimal performance. In fact, it could make you feel slower than you already are, Andrew said with a slight, teasing smile. An awkward silence followed Andrew's explanation. No one said anything, the others exchanged confused looks, unsure if it was a joke or an unsolicited nutrition lesson. Just then, Olivia let out an exaggerated, fake laugh. Oh, saturated fats and processed proteins. Are you talking about processed meat? How clever, she said, clutching her chest as if she'd just heard the funniest joke in the world. I knew you'd get my joke. Does it make sense now, guys? Andrew asked with a smile, looking at Olivia, who nodded in agreement. The rest just chuckled nervously, not adding anything. Olivia finished writing down their orders and tucked away her notepad. I'll bring everything out in a few minutes. Good luck tonight, Andrew. Starter or not, I'm sure you'll make your presence known, she said with a smile before walking away. Hey man, she's totally into you, Reggie said as soon as Olivia was out of sight. Yes, who in their right mind would laugh at such a bad joke? Said Steve, supporting Reggie's earlier point. The others nodded and looked at Andrew with mischievous smiles. Hey, what's so bad about my nutrition joke? You can learn and laugh, what more do you want? Andrew said, giving the table a light tap. Learn, yes. Laugh, no, Kevin replied, and everyone agreed. Seriously, you guys are the problem. I've made plenty of nutrition jokes, and they've gotten good reactions, Andrew said, crossing his arms. At that moment, Archie raised his hand as if he'd just realized something. Wait a second, are the only people who laugh at your jokes girls? He asked. Andrew muttered, thinking back to the people who laughed at his jokes. Only images of girls laughing at his nutrition jokes came to mind. Yeah, just girls, he finally admitted. Now do you see why only girls laugh? Kevin asked, sharing a knowing look with Archie and then Andrew. Oh, yeah, Andrew said with a grimace. It seemed that only the girls interested in him laughed at his nutrition jokes. That's great, you've got a way to tell if a girl's into you. Just crack one of those jokes and, bam, you'll know if she wants to kiss you or something, said Steve with a smile. Oh, true, a perfect indirect method, Reggie added, stroking his chin. The only thing is, it could go really well or really badly, you know. If the girl laughs, everyone wins. But if she doesn't, you're just the weird guy telling jokes about saturated fats, hoping someone finds it funny, Kevin said, and everyone burst into laughter, except Andrew. It was supposed to be about teasing Steve, not me, Andrew thought, but he didn't say anything. At least the mood had lightened, even if it was at the expense of his nutrition jokes. Back to the point, ask that older girl out, Reggie said with a smile. She's 19, Andrew replied, looking hesitant. The idea of dating an older girl was appealing to Andrew. Considering both his lives, he was mentally around 25 or 26. Although he had relived his childhood and never truly faced the responsibilities of adult life. That's the best part, a 19-year-old girl wants something with you, Reggie said, excited and a bit envious. The others started cheering Andrew on like a group of chimps hyping each other up. Alright, enough, I'll do it when I'm the starting player and have something to brag about, Andrew said, unable to deny that, at some point, the idea of having a relationship with an older girl had crossed his mind. After all, he was still a heterosexual guy. Everyone started clapping as if they had just secured starting positions themselves. After a few minutes of waiting, Olivia returned with the food. After eating and chatting, they headed to the buses to make their way to the rival school's field. It was time for the game. 19 comments 0 vote, family discussion. Dunphy House, if he wants to play with his friends, then let him play with his friends. You will not decide where my son will play, shouted Mitchell, red with anger, at Jay. In the Dunphy living room, a discussion that had started just minutes ago was quickly escalating in intensity. Since it was Game Friday and this time they were playing an away game, the family had gathered at the Dunphy house to head to the visiting field together. As for Andrew, he wasn't with them because he would be traveling on the school buses with the rest of the team. The argument was started by Jay, who told Mitchell that Andrew shouldn't be playing for a 5th Division high school given his athletic level. The CIF California Interscholastic Federation divides the football system into 13 divisions, which represent varying levels of competition among schools. The first division is the highest, where schools with the strongest programs and most well-prepared teams are found. As the divisions decrease, the competitiveness and overall level of the teams progressively drop. Andrew's school is in the 5th division, an intermediate level that, while not lacking in talent, does not offer the same competitive intensity as the higher divisions. Andrew chose to stay at this school as a personal challenge. His plan is to climb divisions year after year, eventually reaching the 2nd or 1st division to win the state's most prestigious and significant championship. That is his primary goal. Schools in the lower divisions have access to state championships within their own division. However, these state championships are limited to the division in which they compete. Teams playing in the higher divisions, such as the 1st and 2nd, have access to the most prestigious state championships, encompassing the top teams from across the state. During his time in middle school, Andrew had been a star, achieving a pass of over 70 yards, winning 2 district championships, earning outstanding records, MVP awards, and more. Because of this, several 1st and 2nd Division high schools offered him a spot on their teams. However, he turned them down, and Mitchell and Cameron respected his decision. But Jay didn't share the same perspective as Cameron and Mitchell. He thought Andrew was being immature and throwing his future away. Jay couldn't understand why Andrew would reject the chance to join a higher division school with more advanced football programs and the possibility of competing at the most prestigious state level. Jay doubted Andrew's ability to carry the team on his shoulders and led them to climb at least 3 divisions, especially since, in his opinion, the team lacked talent. Not everyone had the talent Andrew possessed, and it wasn't just about the players. The coach, the sports program, the infrastructure, all these factors mattered too. Even if Andrew's talent somehow managed to perform a miracle and take the team to the top, Jay believed it would be too late to truly compete in a significant state championship. Colleges offering prestigious sports scholarships focused on first and second division teams and their state championships. After all, Andrew would only have 1 year to play at higher division levels, a limited time to adapt to an entirely new level of competition. Friends, we're talking about his damn future as a professional. He can't make decisions based on friendship, said Jay with exasperation. Jay and Mitchell stood facing each other in the center of the living room. The others, Claire, Gloria, Cameron, Phil, Alex, and Manny, sat on the couches watching the argument, which seemed like it could go on for a long time. As for Haley, she was in her room getting ready, and Luke was playing in his room, who knows with what. Professional. It's his first year of high school, Phil interjected, raising his hands in a conciliatory gesture. Maybe we're putting too much pressure on him. This is the time for him to have fun, enjoy the game, and spend time with his friends. Dad, Phil's right, we should respect his decision, added Claire. Although she was competitive, they couldn't force Andrew to attend a different school. If he wanted to play with his childhood friends, so be it. Fun, respect, Jay repeated, glaring at them. Andrew isn't just any kid. He's always saying he's going to be a professional and win a Super Bowl. That's why I, as his grandfather, take it so seriously. How could I not, when he sets those goals for himself? He added, and the room fell silent because the old grouch had a point. As the argument in the living room dragged on, an unexpected voice broke the silence. Mom, do you think Miss Robbins will like this poem? Manny asked, oblivious to the argument and uninterested in the family drama. Manny had spent the last few minutes writing a poem at the coffee table. Gloria, who had been examining her nails and was equally disinterested in the family drama, since she knew nothing about football and how it was organized, looked at her son with a warm smile. Let me hear it, M.I. Amor, she said affectionately. Manny cleared his throat, adopting a theatrical stance as he held the sheet of paper in front of him. With a solemn tone, he began to recite. The light of your class brightens my days. Miss Robbins, you're pure inspiration. A wise guide with a great heart. Your teachings are a special gift. Thank you for everything, my favorite teacher. Gloria hugged him, moved. It's beautiful, Manny. I'm sure Miss Robbins will love it. Miss Robbins, your English teacher? Jay asked, and Manny nodded. Jay sighed internally but said nothing. He'd already had a discussion with Gloria about this and decided it was best not to comment. Now then, Jay said, returning to the main argument. Is nobody going to say anything? I'm right, I'll talk to Andrew and make sure he transfers to another school at the end of the semester, he added, crossing his arms with the confidence of someone convinced they had already won the argument. Well, technically, Grandpa has a point. Also, I have something else to add to this discussion. Andrew is always kind to everyone. Don't we all remember how he agreed to go out with that girl just so he wouldn't hurt her feelings? Alex said with feigned innocence. Everyone nodded, recalling the incident with Veronica, which was a well-known story in the family. What does that have to do with transferring schools? Mitchell asked, frowning. It's obvious. It's probably the same reason he won't leave his 5th division school. He doesn't want to seem like the kind of person who abandons his friends. Andrew is too kind, Alex replied, adding fuel to the fire, which was her goal. Jay let out a huff and threw his hands in the air. Aha, see, that's exactly what I'm saying. He's making immature decisions based on friendship and feelings, not on what's best for him. Maybe he wants to achieve something great with his current team, said Phil, siding with Mitchell and Cameron. The argument continued, with Phil supporting Mitchell, Claire staying neutral, though she was slowly leaning more toward Jay's side. Alex returned to her book, satisfied with what she had stirred up. Enough, everyone, Cam shouted in a sharp tone, suddenly standing up from the couch. Everyone fell silent and turned to look at Cameron. Jay, I take my son's future very seriously, said Cam, and Jay nodded slightly. He was aware of Cam's football past and understood the importance of these decisions. And Andrew takes his future even more seriously than we do. This isn't an immature decision or one made for friendship, Cam continued, taking a deep breath. Everyone nodded in agreement. If anyone was serious about his football future, it was Andrew. He never missed his training, followed his nutrition plan, adhered to his daily routine, and displayed a discipline that proved how serious he was about becoming a professional. What do you mean? You said he didn't accept the other schools so he wouldn't abandon his friends, said Claire, narrowing her eyes and looking directly at Mitchell. Yes, we lied, admitted Mitchell, no longer hiding the truth. Alex was right, Andrew is kind to everyone, Cameron interjected, taking the lead. Except when it comes to football. Exactly. If there's one thing where Andrew puts friendship second, it's football. He didn't stay at his school for his friends, he stayed because he wants a bigger challenge, Mitchell explained. A bigger challenge, Claire repeated, raising an eyebrow. That's right, confirmed Cameron. Andrew doesn't just want to join an established first or second division team. He wants to take a team in a lower division and turn it into something great. He wants to prove that he can lead them to success. That's the reason he gave us, but if we'd told you that, what would you have thought? Mitchell added, crossing his arms. It would have sounded like he was being arrogant, like he thought he was the only one who could help that team move up divisions. And we didn't want everyone to see him that way. The room fell silent again until Jay suddenly burst into laughter, breaking the tension. Everyone stared at him, surprised, expecting some sarcastic remark. But instead, Jay shook his head, and a smile spread across his face. That's a much better reason than that friendship nonsense, said Jay with a proud smile. It's not arrogance, it's ambition. And that's not a bad thing, especially in this sport. What? Asked Claire, confused. Now you agree with him? Of course I do. It shows he's different from the rest, replied Jay, shifting from anger to satisfaction. So, you're not going to insist that he switches schools? Mitchell asked, still a bit skeptical. That hasn't changed, but I'll give him, at the very least, a year. A year to prove with actions what he's saying. I'll trust him, but if he doesn't manage to move up even one division in that time, then I'll be the first to tell him to find another team, Jay replied. It's good to reach an agreement. Although if that happens, I doubt you'll be able to change Andrew's mind. He's more stubborn than you can imagine when it comes to football, said Cam, and everyone laughed because it was true. At that moment, Haley came rushing down the stairs, glanced toward the living room, and was surprised to see everyone there, deep in conversation. What are you all doing here? Why didn't anyone tell me it was time? You're going to make us late for the game, Haley exclaimed, a bit flustered as she adjusted her bag and gave her makeup some final touches. Oh, Haley finished getting ready first. That's new, said Alex, looking up from her book. Usually, Claire had to rush Haley to finish getting ready so they wouldn't be late for the game. Let's go, let's go. Move it, Cameron shouted, rushing toward the door when he noticed the time. 19 comments 0 vote. The game won. The game against Wilson High School had begun with great energy in the air. Wilson High School had won the 2 games they played so far, the friendly match and the first season game, so they were in high spirits, and playing at home overshadowed the visiting fans. Mitch, Cam, and the others found a spot in a raised corner of the visiting stands. From there, the view wasn't the best, but they did their best, along with the other parents and families from Andrew's school, to make their cheers and applause heard. However, their efforts were constantly overshadowed by the thunderous support of the home crowd and the harsh reality reflected on the scoreboard. 2 quarters of the game had already passed, and Palisades High School, Andrew's school, was losing 35-10. Andrew's team sucks, Jay. And you complained about the thrashing my soccer team got, Manny said, glancing at the scoreboard as the 3rd quarter began. For Manny to make a comment like that was unusual. Normally, he preferred to spend his time writing melancholic poems or seeking love in his many muses, rather than getting involved in sports. Really, Manny, Jay said in his signature dry tone. Right now, with this score, you decide to pay attention to a sport. Of all possible moments, you pick this one. It's tragic, at least it'll inspire a poem. Oh, and I can give Andrew a motivational speech, just like he always gives me, Manny replied with a faint smile, waiting for the moment to get his revenge. Manny, don't say that. It's not funny, Gloria scolded, trying to understand what on earth was happening on the field. She couldn't figure out why teams sometimes attacked and other times defended. Come on, Andrew, you can turn this around, it's only a 25-point difference. Lily supports you, Cam exclaimed, standing up with Lily and trying to cheer, though his attempt was drowned out by the rival chants. I don't think this is the best environment to bring a baby. Claire commented with a critical look. Do you think Andrew can do something from the bench? Like he has psychic powers? Mitchell asked with a frown, frustrated with the coach's decisions for not putting Andrew in and leaving Jason, an incompetent quarterback who hadn't made a good pass all game. A few seats away, Leonard and Howard were talking in low voices, not even paying attention to the game. Sports weren't their thing, and although they were friends with Andrew, he didn't force them to attend school games because he knew they didn't enjoy them. Leonard and Howard were there because later that night, they would go to Pippa's house. Finally, there was going to be a gathering with girls. Howard was the most excited since he would finally have a chance to approach a girl in a more private setting within a circle of friends. Leonard was happy, too, since he could expand his social circle and talk to a girl, but he wasn't as demonstrative as Howard. This is our big chance, Leonard. I'm finally going to talk to Kara. A real conversation. Do you know what that means? Howard said with an eager smile. Let me guess. Leonard replied with a thoughtful look. Are you going to talk to her about her favorite movies, favorite bands, and how she hates indiscriminate tree cutting? Leonard added, raising an eyebrow at Howard. Exactly, I've told you before, Howard nodded confidently. Stalking her on Facebook seems to have worked for you, Leonard said, shaking his head. As for him, he wouldn't stoop so low. He'd try to let things happen naturally if possible, or at least avoid making a fool of himself. It wasn't stalking, it was strategic research. It's totally normal, everyone does it, Howard justified himself without a hint of guilt or shame. Sure, everyone does, Leonard replied, choosing not to press further since it was pointless. A few rows above Leonard and Howard, Pippa sat with her close-knit group of friends, Kara, her best friend Lauren, Connor, and Zach, friends she had known since she was 10 years old. What's wrong? Zach asked, looking at Kara, who, for some reason, shivered and hugged herself as if she had suddenly gotten very cold. I don't know, I just got a chill out of nowhere, Kara replied, rubbing her arms to shake off the sensation. Lauren, always quick with a joke, grinned. Maybe someone's talking about you, she said with a mischievous smile. What if it's not something good? Lately, I've felt like someone's been watching me all the time, you know. That feeling that someone's staring at you, but you don't know who or what. Kara said with a dramatic expression. It could be the evil eye, or worse, some obsessed stalker, Lauren added, though she didn't seem overly concerned. Another one of your crazy, out-of-nowhere theories? Connor asked, rolling his eyes and letting out a small smile. Pay attention to the game, Pippa interrupted, clearly not sharing her friend's humor. Her gaze was fixed on the field, where Andrew sat on the bench with an expression of frustration and reluctance as he watched his team get crushed. Oh, come on, Pip. Why do you care so much? It's not like Andrew's going to change anything from the bench, Connor said in a tone meant to sound casual but laced with a hint of mockery. And what do you know, Connor? Andrew isn't on the field because the coach won't give him the chance, not because he can't make a difference. You saw him play in middle school, or have you already forgotten he won 2 district championships and was MVP? Pippa shot back, narrowing her eyes at Connor. Connor shrugged, feigning indifference, though his jaw tightened slightly. That was in middle school, Pip. This is different, maybe he's not at the level everyone expected. Really, or does it just bother you how good he is as a quarterback? You should question the coach's decisions more, not a player who's proven what he can do before and hasn't been given a chance, Pippa shot back firmly. Wow, Pip, calm down. I think even Andrew could feel how hard you're defending him from here, Kara added with a nervous giggle, trying to ease the tension. Luckily for Connor, at that moment, a loud uproar from everyone around them quickly drew attention back to the field. What happened? Did they score another touchdown against us? Muttered Zach, who had been following the argument between Pippa and Connor. No, they tackled our quarterback, and it looks like he's injured, commented Victor, Pippa's dad, who had known her friends for many years. The earlier argument didn't matter to him, he was entirely focused on the game, being a big football enthusiast. Dad, does that mean? Asked Josh, Pippa's younger brother, standing up from his seat with a look of hope replacing his earlier expression of defeat. Yes, son, Victor nodded, cutting him off. A faint smile began to form on his face, the first since this dreadful game started. On the field, Jason lay on the ground clutching his arm and groaning in pain, or so it seemed. With the help of his teammates, he removed his helmet and looked toward the coach on the sideline, gesturing at his arm. The referees, noticing the signal, quickly approached, and Jason, between gasps, indicated that a substitution was necessary. The referees wasted no time and raised their hands to signal a player change. The coach, already aware of the situation, signaled to Andrew. Andrew, who had been sitting on the bench the entire game, immediately jumped up and started warming up. He quickly finished, put on his helmet, and readied himself to take the field. The visiting stands, which had been silent until then due to the humiliating defeat, erupted into cheers and applause as they saw Andrew heading onto the field. "Let's go, Andrew," Cameron shouted, standing up enthusiastically. "Crush them," Claire yelled, clenching her fists, eager to see the look of defeat on the home crowd's faces. Andrew, with his helmet securely in place, walked confidently toward the line of scrimmage, the imaginary line that separates the teams in football and marks the starting point for each play. The referee signaled for him to get ready as the opposing team lined up in their defensive positions. 40-yard line, a long way to go, Andrew thought, glancing at the clock. They were 2 minutes into the third quarter. The team needed to advance more than 60 yards to reach the end zone. "Let's do this," Andrew murmured with an excited smile. Finally, he would get to play a real game after so long. He was going to enjoy himself, and, of course, crush his opponent. 27 comments 0 vote. The Game 2. Recommended soundtrack. iShield 21B Survivor. Andrew crouched behind the center, his eyes quickly scanning the opposing defense. The linebackers looked ready to lunge at him. "I have to lead players with whom I have never practiced and without a clear strategy from the coach, Tish," Andrew muttered to himself. "Set. Hut," Andrew shouted, and the ball snapped into his hands. Instead of stepping back to prepare a pass, Andrew made a quick move to his right, faking out the nearest defensive lineman. "He's going to run," someone on the opposing team shouted, but by the time they said it, Andrew was already surging forward. With his impressive speed, thanks to his training and genetics, he covered a significant number of yards in just a few seconds. Rarely in previous games had he showcased his speed and reflexes to evade defenders, as it wasn't necessary, his passes always hit their mark. But right now, he didn't trust the receivers or the non-existent strategy from the coach. He would have to score a touchdown himself. As Andrew continued charging ahead, a defender dove for his legs, but he lightly sidestepped, causing the defender to collide with another player who was about to lunge at him. He managed to reach the 50-yard line in a single run, and no one had stopped him yet. In football, you get 4 attempts or downs to advance 10 yards. If you fail to gain those 10 yards within the next 3 tries, you lose possession of the ball and hand control over to the opposing team. By advancing 10 yards, Andrew ensured that if he was tackled now, the team would have another set of 4 downs, starting the next play from the 50-yard line, closer to the end zone. They would keep pushing until they scored a touchdown. "Come on, Andrew," Pippa shouted from the visitor stands, clenching her fists nervously. Her father, brother, and friends, except Connor, were also cheering for Andrew, many surprised by his incredible speed and reflexes to dodge players. Yes, dodge them all," Claire shouted. Oh, is that Andrew? I can't see well," Leonard said, squinting and adjusting his glasses for a better view. He didn't recognize Andrew and didn't even understand the rules of football, but if everyone was cheering enthusiastically, it must be a good sign. Howard, next to him, shrugged since he didn't understand anything either, but he started cheering along because everyone else was doing it. "Run, you training maniac," Howard yelled. Andrew kept pushing forward, reaching the 60-yard line when a linebacker tried to block him. With a sudden spin move, Andrew left the defender with empty hands and a confused expression. What just happened? The defender thought. At the 70-yard line, Andrew was still running. The home crowd was shouting in frustration, as was the opposing coach. "Take him down, damn it. Somebody stop him." When Andrew reached the 82-yard line, 2 defenders, coordinated and fast, closed in on him from opposite sides. Andrew tried to juke them, but this time, he had no way out. He was tackled hard. He fell to the ground, rolling over to protect the ball. The defenders' hands gripped him tightly, but he didn't let go of the ball. The whistle blew, and the play was over. First down, a 42-yard gain. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers, as the visitor stands erupted in cheers. "That's it," Jay exclaimed, his voice hoarse with excitement and a satisfied smile on his face, giving a high five to Phil, who was the closest to him. "Ouch," Phil muttered, grabbing his hand with a pained grimace he tried to hide, though it didn't matter since Jay's eyes were fixed on the field. What's wrong with Andrew's team? Nobody helped him, not even to block a single damn defender. "They're useless," Pippa exclaimed angrily, though she was thrilled by Andrew's incredible success in advancing 40 amazing yards in a single down. "Pip," Kara murmured, still processing the intensity in her friend's tone. "That's the spirit, my girl. Shout louder," Victor exclaimed with a grin. On the field, Andrew quickly got up, brushing the dirt off his uniform. "Not bad. If I'd had some support from my team, I could have gone further," Andrew thought. His seniors hadn't been able to follow and support him, though he didn't blame them entirely since he hadn't told them he was going to run and needed backup. The opposing defenders were panting and visibly frustrated, staring at him as if they couldn't believe what had just happened. The team gathered in the huddle, surrounding Andrew. Their gazes were a mix of respect and amazement. Even the seniors, Jason's close friends, seemed to start questioning their loyalty to the starting quarterback after witnessing Andrew's performance in that play. Andrew had only needed one play in a real game to make such an impression on the seniors. "We'll repeat the previous play," Andrew said in a firm and direct tone, no over-the-top emotion, no motivational speeches. "This time, I need someone to follow me and block the first defenders that come at me. I'll fake right but cut left. I want the receivers to stay alert. If I see an opening, I'll pass the ball. If not, I'll take it myself," he added, giving clear instructions. "To your positions," Andrew ordered without waiting for a response. The team nodded without objection. There was something in his tone and posture that inspired immediate, almost instinctive confidence. Everyone quickly lined up in their positions. "Set, hut." The ball snapped perfectly into his hands, and the play began. Andrew faked to the right, drawing in the defenders, but in a swift motion, he changed direction to the left, dodging a linebacker who lunged into empty space. A lineman teammate followed closely, blocking the second defender who tried to intercept Andrew. Andrew ran with even more speed than before, leaving everyone stunned. Just a few yards from the end zone, two defenders closed in on him. Andrew performed a lateral jump to avoid the first hit and twisted his body to absorb the impact of the second defender, but he didn't stop. He pushed forward with all his strength, crossing the goal line while cradling the ball tightly in both arms. "Touchdown!" roared the loudspeaker, accompanied by a deafening explosion of cheers from the visiting stands. "Yes," Cameron and Haley squealed, hugging and jumping up and down. Phil enthusiastically lifted Luke, who was cheering happily even though he didn't fully understand what was happening. He just knew his cousin was doing what he always did, crushing the competition. Jay and Mitchell hugged each other until Jay realized what he was doing and awkwardly pulled back, slightly embarrassed. "Do you see it now? Andrew can lead this team to second or even first division," Mitchell exclaimed with a proud smile, not noticing Jay's mild embarrassment from the hug. "Ahem, let's not celebrate just yet, there's still a quarter and a half left to play," Jay said cautiously. Andrew didn't raise his arms, smile, or do anything celebratory. He adjusted his helmet and calmly walked back to his team. Now they had the chance to either kick for an extra point or attempt a two-point conversion. For the extra point, the ball had to be kicked from the 15-yard line through the uprights, earning 1 point. To go for a two-point conversion, the team would have to carry the ball into the end zone through a play, either a pass or a run, from the 3-yard line. This was riskier. Teams typically opted for the extra point unless they were desperate for more points. Andrew's teammates on the field weren't sure how to react. Some still felt uneasy about the situation, glancing at Jason on the bench. He sat there injured, watching the game in clear surprise like most of the crowd. Others were simply unsure what to make of Andrew's cold and composed demeanor. "Well done, Captain," Kevin exclaimed, giving Andrew a high five, which he accepted. For the first time, Andrew showed a faint smile. "We're going for the two-point conversion," Andrew said, immediately returning to his serious tone. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a statement. "Really, why not just kick the extra point?" one of the linemen asked, looking at Andrew with doubt. "We always kick, it's a guaranteed point," said the kicker, who was usually in charge in these situations. The coach always instructed them to take the safe point. "We're losing 35-16. Playing it safe won't get us back in this game," Andrew said, his tone firm and unwavering. No one argued further after seeing the serious, no-nonsense look on his face, so different from the friendly demeanor he usually had at school. Andrew and the rest of the team lined up at the 3-yard line. That's when everyone began to realize they were going for the 2-point conversion. "What the hell are they doing?" Andrew's coach muttered. This wasn't the plan after a touchdown, but it was too late for him to intervene. "Set, hut," Andrew shouted, receiving the snap. The opposing team was already poised to stop him, with their linebackers in position. But Andrew moved quickly and with agility, executing a fake that completely fooled the defenders, who were expecting another rushing attempt. This miscalculation by the opposing team gave Andrew the time, the gap, and the opportunity he needed. With a quick and precise throw, he launched the ball, a clean pass straight into the end zone. The ball arrived at just the right moment, and the receiver caught it effortlessly, landing inside the end zone. 2 points, 35-18. Palisades High School wakes up and gets back in the game, though they still have a long way to go before they can celebrate, the announcer shouted, followed by a roar from the visiting crowd. "Did you see that pass, Dad? That was incredible," Josh exclaimed, jumping out of his seat. "Yes, that was amazing," Pippa shouted with a smile, not realizing her brother wasn't talking to her, but she didn't care. Josh looked at his sister with confusion, momentarily distracted from the euphoria of seeing his team score. He had never seen her this enthusiastic about football games. He knew she understood the game, she was smart and had to watch the matches because of the family, but she'd never shown much excitement before. Andrew approached the coach and the rest of the team, who were looking at him with a mix of happiness and doubt. The ones celebrating loudly and giving him high fives were Reggie, Archie, Steve, and the others. The cheerleaders, who had positioned themselves in a corner of the stands, began jumping and waving their pom-poms with excitement after the successful 2-point conversion and the touchdown. Veronica was among them. She looked at Andrew with a swirl of mixed emotions but said nothing, focusing on her job as a cheerleader. "Coach," Andrew said, removing his helmet and looking at David. "What is it, Andrew?" the coach asked in a serious tone, not showing any irritation about the 2-point conversion decision. This wasn't the moment to reprimand Andrew. "Can I play defense? I'm fast, and I can tackle. We need to do something to stop their offense," Andrew requested, his tone direct yet respectful. The coach paused, thinking. It wasn't entirely uncommon for a player to play both offense and defense. Considering Andrew's speed, agility, and strength, evident when he'd been tackled and immediately got back up, it wasn't unreasonable to let him join the defensive lineup. "All right, but don't overexert yourself," David finally replied. Andrew returned to the field, this time with the defensive team. Many were surprised to see him back on the field so quickly. 26 comments, 0 vote. The game 3, another successful 2-point conversion for Palisades High School, shouted the commentator, his voice amplified by the loudspeaker. Mitchell, Cam, Jay, and everyone in the visiting stands cheered and applauded enthusiastically at yet another successful 2-point conversion by their team. This is an epic comeback. 35-34. They're just 1 point behind. Since player number 19, Andrew Pritchett Tucker, entered the game, Palisades High School has scored 3 consecutive touchdowns and successfully converted all the 2-point attempts, the commentator said, his voice filled with surprise and excitement. As a neutral commentator, witnessing such an epic comeback was the best thing that could happen to him, not only as a sports fan but also to make the game commentary even more thrilling. That's not all, Mark. Since Andrew stepped onto the field, he hasn't just transformed Palisades' offense but has also dominated on defense. Wilson High School hasn't been able to score another touchdown since he joined the defense. This kid is leaving his mark on both sides of the game, the analyst commented, his tone a mix of awe and admiration. Yes, incredible. Now Wilson High School takes the offensive. There are only about 4 minutes left in the game, the commentator exclaimed with a serious tone. If Palisades wants to win, they need to stop this offense quickly and get back to scoring. Time is gold, he added. We're good on time, the only thing is, they can't score, Andrew thought. He had to keep a cool head, there were almost 4 full minutes left. The opposing team burned time, taking their time to line up, which drew complaints from Coach David and several players on the bench. Set Hut, shouted the rival quarterback, and the ball snapped into his hands. Wasting no time, he handed it off to his running back, who quickly chose the left side, where it seemed fewer defenders were positioned. But he had made a grave mistake. That was Andrew's zone. The running back lowered his head and charged forward, confident he could break through the gap. However, Andrew had already read the play. His body tensed as he calculated the perfect moment to strike. As the runner reached the line of scrimmage, Andrew moved like lightning, lowering his body and executing a textbook tackle. With one arm aimed at the runner's midsection, Andrew struck with devastating force, stopping him dead in his tracks and driving him to the ground with a sharp, resounding impact. The crowd gasped collectively, both home and visiting fans instinctively wincing at the painful tackle the runner had to endure. "Oh my God, what a tackle by Andrew! That even hurt me," exclaimed the commentator. It was the first time Andrew executed such a fast and powerful tackle. He didn't have time to go softer, he had to shut down the offense as quickly as possible. The opposing running back lay motionless for a few seconds, struggling to catch his breath. His teammates helped him up as he shook his head, clearly reconsidering whether he wanted to touch the ball again. "Don't give me the ball again," the running back muttered. His quarterback gave him a puzzled look but simply shook his head. They gained a mere 2 yards and had only 3 downs left. If they continued down this path, they'd lose possession and have no chance of reaching the end zone. They needed to go for a pass. The play resumed. "Set Hut," shouted the Wilson School quarterback as the ball snapped into his hands. He began to retreat, scanning for a passing lane while his linemen worked to protect him. Seeing his linemen collapse as 2 massive defenders charged toward him, he made a hasty decision. He spotted his nearest receiver, seemingly in a perfect position to catch the pass, and threw the ball with all his strength. But Andrew had already read the play. He'd had enough time to follow the quarterback's eyes, allowing him to leap at the perfect moment and intercept the pass with both hands. The visiting stands erupted into a deafening roar. "Interception. Andrew Pritchett Tucker does it again," the commentator shouted, his voice brimming with excitement. "Is this kid everywhere or what?" Andrew landed with the ball securely in his arms and began to sprint. Just 50 yards, Andrew thought, determined to end the game. His feet pounded the turf as he pushed forward, eating up the yards. "Ooh," yelled Kevin as he hurled himself with all his strength at a massive lineman trying to stop Andrew's run. Kevin managed to bring the lineman down, tackling him to the turf. At Andrew's request, Kevin had also joined the defense. Coach David couldn't deny a request from his sudden star player, who was now leading both the offense and defense. Taking advantage of the opportunity Kevin created, Andrew continued his run. Another defender tried to catch him from the side, but Andrew accelerated, leaving him behind. One of the opposing running backs charged toward Andrew. He caught sight of him out of the corner of his eye. Dodging him will be difficult, he thought in a split second. However, a shout broke through the tension. "Stop right there, you bastard," yelled his team's defensive leader, who launched himself at the rival runner, tackling him to the ground and pinning him there. "Run, Junior," the defensive leader shouted, giving Andrew a thumbs up. The defensive leader felt deeply guilty for all the points they had conceded today. As the leader of the defense, he considered himself responsible for it, although Andrew didn't entirely agree. It wasn't that the defensive leader didn't share some of the blame, but the real fault lay with Jason, who had repeatedly lost the offensive position. Jason's passes had been inaccurate, often ending up in the hands of opposing defenders or falling incomplete. His mistakes had cost them possession multiple times, leaving the defense exposed and exhausted, repeatedly facing Wilson High School's advances. Thanks to the defensive leader's assist, Andrew made it to the touchdown line. "Touchdown, a perfect pick six," the commentator shouted with excitement. The term, pick six, referred to when a defensive player intercepted a quarterback's pass and returned it directly to the end zone, scoring a defensive touchdown. It was a highly valuable and celebrated play because it not only stopped the opponent's advance but also earned points for the defensive team. The visiting stands, though smaller in size, were on their feet, roaring with applause and cheers for Palisades High School. Phil lifted Luke into the air, the boy laughing as he was tossed up. Claire hugged Haley, a rare sight, and even Alex joined in, offering a faint smile and clapping calmly. Mitch and Cameron embraced tightly, an unusual display for Mitch, who often struggled to show affection in public. Jay, usually stoic, clapped with a wide smile and even let out a whistle. Pippa celebrated by hugging and bouncing with Kara and Lauren, while Zach clapped enthusiastically from the side, a smile on his face. The least enthusiastic among them was Connor, who clapped with minimal energy. Excited to meet tonight's star, Zach teased, glancing at his friend. He knew exactly why Connor wasn't thrilled about Andrew. Connor had liked Pippa since middle school but had never mustered the courage to make a move. Now, with Andrew entering their lives and growing closer to her, it left Connor feeling uneasy, as though he had a rival. And not just any rival. Andrew was the most popular athlete in their grade, a two-time middle school champion, and now delivering an extraordinary performance, turning what seemed like a certain loss into a comeback victory. To make matters worse for Connor, he and Pippa's group of friends had learned that Andrew was visiting her house on weekends to work on a programming project. Connor didn't like this one bit, but there was nothing he could do to stop it. After all, he wasn't in any kind of relationship with Pippa. The scoreboard updated. Palisades High School 40, Wilson High School 35. Andrew held the ball high, smiling behind his helmet. Finally, he could relax a bit. His entire defensive team ran to him, embracing him roughly and exchanging high fives. The offensive team took to the field. Andrew spoke with the coach to decide whether to attempt a two-point conversion, a riskier play, or secure a single point with a kick. The kick was a guaranteed point, bringing their score to 41 and leaving them one touchdown ahead of the opposing team. However, if Wilson managed to score a touchdown, they would tie the game, and with their own kick, they'd reach 42 points to take the lead. Considering the limited time left and how solid Palisades' defense, especially with Andrew, had been, the coach opted for the safer route, the kick. Andrew obeyed the decision, agreeing with the coach to an extent, although he personally would have gone for the two-point conversion. If, by some unexpected twist, Wilson scored a touchdown, a single-point kick would still put them at 42. From the 15-yard line, the kicker struck the ball hard, sending it cleanly between the two uprights and securing another point. 41 points for Palisades, 35 points for Wilson. The coach had been right. Wilson didn't have much time left, and their morale had plummeted after the stunning comeback by Palisades. As the clock ran down to 0, the referee raised his hands to signal the end of the game. Game over, 35 for Wilson and 41 for Palisades, pulling off an extraordinary comeback victory. The commentator exclaimed, rising from his seat with microphone in hand. The crowd erupted into cheers as Palisades players, both those on the field and on the bench, celebrated their hard-fought victory. 3-3 comments 0 vote. Post-game, Andrew's team celebrated the victory like never before. The least happy one seemed to be Jason, as he got injured. Although it wasn't serious, or so they told him, he couldn't show his disappointment openly. He smiled and celebrated, but if you looked closely, you could tell it wasn't natural. As for the other seniors close to Jason, especially on the offense, they completely forgot about the starting position dispute and were ecstatic over the team's epic comeback. The leader of the defense, Liam, was thrilled, and the rest of the defensive players felt the same. So was Coach David. His team's epic comeback made him care little about the previous issues of leaving his nephew and his friends as starters. Archie, Reggie, Steve, and Andrew's other friends were overjoyed by the huge victory despite not playing a single minute. They knew this game would change things, with Andrew as the starter. Not because they thought Andrew would demand the coach play his friends, like Jason did, but because now the coach would have to put the players with the best performance during practice, or so they hoped. Andrew headed to the locker room with the rest of the team in a festive atmosphere. After getting changed, they left the locker room to meet up with their families and friends who had come to watch the game. "Hey, Andrew," called Reggie, walking up to Andrew, who was heading toward the exit of the locker room, hoping to find his family and his two friends, Leonard and Howard. "What?" asked Andrew, expecting Reggie to tell him they were heading to Archie's house as usual, sticking to the tradition they always followed after Friday night games. This time, though, Andrew couldn't join them because he had other plans. "Liam's throwing a party at his house. We're invited. Everyone's going, cheerleaders and even the most popular girls," said Reggie, a grin forming on his face. "Our first big high school party," exclaimed Steve excitedly, joining the conversation. "Don't yell, idiot, you're going to make us look like rookies," muttered Archie, scolding Steve. "Really, is Jason going too?" asked Andrew. It seemed the tradition of gathering at Archie's house every Friday after the game would be broken in high school, thanks to teenage parties. "Yeah," Reggie replied, Not too thrilled about it, but he wasn't about to miss the first big high school party. If we gain the confidence of Liam and the rest of the defense, we'll have power in the team. Jason won't be able to do whatever he wants anymore, commented Kevin. Liam, the defensive leader, was in his second to last year of high school, not the same year as Jason. From what Andrew had seen, Liam was a great defensive leader and player, much better than Jason and one of the best at Palisades High School, excluding Andrew himself. Good luck with that, Andrew said, and everyone gave him puzzled looks. You're not coming, Reggie asked. You have to come, you were the star tonight, exclaimed Steve. They hadn't played a single minute. How would they get everyone's attention if Andrew wasn't there? Without him, they were just guys who watched the game from the bench, except Kevin, but he wasn't the star of the night. I have plans, Andrew replied, briefly explaining that he was going to Pippa's house, his friend from programming class. The guys already knew who she was since they'd seen Andrew talking to her during breaks or in the hallways. Oh, they all said in unison, looking at him with slight smirks that made Andrew frown. And here I thought you were still upset about Veronica, commented Steve. When have you seen me upset about Veronica? Muttered Andrew, a vein appearing on his forehead. Today, Veronica gave you plenty of looks once you stepped onto the field, said Archie, who had been watching from the bench near both teams' cheerleaders. Yeah, she must be regretting breaking up with you, added Reggie with a faint smile. Who knows, if you go to Liam's party, she might try something with you, he added. I don't want anything to do with her. Let her keep playing at being popular, Andrew said curtly with a grimace, and no one else dared to comment when they saw his expression. Rare to see in him expressions of this kind. Andrew agreed to date Veronica for a simple reason, to avoid humiliating her. She had confessed her feelings in front of everyone, in such a public display that Andrew felt he had no choice but to accept, as rejecting her would have embarrassed her deeply. Was it the best decision? Maybe yes, maybe no. But at that moment, it seemed like the most empathetic thing to do. Breaking up with her immediately after agreeing to date her would have been strange and would likely have sparked rumors that could hurt her even more. So, Andrew decided to give it a try and made an effort to be the perfect boyfriend, dedicating himself to making her feel special and taking care of her feelings. However, the relationship proved to be a challenge for Andrew from the start. Although Veronica had some positive traits, like preparing nutritious lunches for him, she was largely self-centered and superficial. She would talk endlessly about herself, rarely giving him a chance to share anything about his own life or interests. Andrew got the sense that, for Veronica, the relationship was more about maintaining her image as a popular girl than about genuine feelings. Eventually, Andrew started following Haley's advice, who suggested he show less interest and stop trying so hard to please Veronica. This shift in attitude didn't go unnoticed, and soon Veronica decided to end the relationship on her own, abruptly and without hesitation. Perhaps Veronica stopped seeing any value in him. Andrew had not only stopped being the perfect boyfriend, also his social standing at high school wasn't remarkable either. He was a benchwarmer on the football team, and his popularity was beginning to fade. To make matters worse, rumors about him started to spread. People said he had nerdy interests, like video games and movies that most teenagers didn't consider cool. Far from being bothered or trying to deny those rumors, Andrew ignored them entirely. He didn't care what others thought. The rumors even gained traction when he started spending more time with Leonard and Howard in public places, something he would no longer hide. Andrew had made a clear decision, to live on his own terms, without worrying about others' opinions. At the end of this whole charade, the only one hurt was him. He wasted his valuable time trying to please a spoiled and shallow girl, all to be dumped. Although he actually preferred this, rather than having hurt a girl with genuine feelings. They left the locker room, and Andrew met up with his family. Everyone celebrated enthusiastically when they saw him, especially his parents. Cam hugged him so tightly that he nearly choked him with his strength. He also met up with Leonard and Howard, who had been brought by the latter's mother. Debbie, a very large woman with no neck, chatted with Cam and Mitchell before leaving the two boys in their care, as they would be taking all three to Pippa's house. After that, Andrew told them to wait for him since he wanted to meet up with Pippa before heading straight to her house. Pippa, who's that? Haley asked Leonard and Howard after Andrew left. Andrew's programming friend, Leonard replied, not understanding why Haley's tone seemed angry. Andrew has a female friend. Never heard of her, and it seems like you haven't either, commented Alex from the side, clearly trying to stir things up. She invited us to her house. We're going now, Howard added with a slight smile, trying to show off a little that he had a social life. She invited Andrew, and he invited us, Leonard corrected. Hey, why are you trying to make us look like losers? Howard whispered to Leonard. She invited Andrew to her house. Why? Haley asked, continuing her interrogation. She's hosting a small gathering with her close friends, Leonard replied. And Andrew is one of her close friends? Haley asked again, this time getting a response from Howard, who noticed the irritation on her face and decided to take a little revenge for when Andrew made them bike until exhaustion only to find out Haley had a boyfriend. Yeah, he's her close friend, though if you ask me, they became close pretty fast. Andrew goes to her house on weekends to work on a project together. They spend hours together, and they have great chemistry, so their relationship progressed quickly, Howard said with a slightly mischievous smile. Chemistry, Haley repeated in an overly calm tone, though it was obvious she wasn't happy hearing this. Oh, Haley, don't be like that. Isn't it sweet? Andrew has a close female friend. It's better than his fake relationship with Veronica, Alex commented with a mocking grin. Haley's frown deepened at this. She knew what her sister was trying to do, but she couldn't help being annoyed by this discovery. Is he not going to Liam's party? Haley asked, trying to calm herself. It wouldn't be good to show jealousy in front of strangers, especially since she was Andrew's cousin. Liam's party? Leonard and Howard asked, looking at each other in confusion. They had no idea who Liam was or what this party was about. Oh, right, they probably weren't invited, Haley thought, sighing internally. She had been invited due to her popularity, and Dylan would also be there since he seemed to be friends with some of the defensive players like Liam. A party after the game? You're not going, Claire said, joining the conversation after hearing the word, party. She knew how these Friday night postgame parties worked. She wouldn't let her daughter go to a party filled with older guys where alcohol was likely involved. It was already enough that she allowed her to date a senior. Fine, Haley said, leaving Claire surprised. She had expected Haley to start yelling and asking why she couldn't go if everyone else was. Haley didn't complain, as she had already decided to go to the gathering at Pippa's house, inviting herself along. Andrew, unaware of Haley's sudden decision, finally found Pippa. It had been difficult to spot her among more than 100 people in the parking lot. When he saw her about 10 meters away, he noticed her parents, Victor and Leanne, her mom, her brother Josh, and her group of friends, 2 guys and 2 girls. Pippa was also scanning the crowd for him, and finally, their eyes met. She began walking briskly toward Andrew, and he did the same. Andrew, you were amazing, Pippa exclaimed with excitement and an enthusiastic smile on her face. She had never been particularly interested in football, but this game had her thrilled from the moment Andrew stepped onto the field and began the epic comeback. Thanks, now we're at an even record, 11, Andrew said, happy to see Pippa's enthusiasm. To qualify for the playoffs, the team needed an overall record with more wins than losses compared to the other teams they faced. Before Pippa could continue the conversation, her father and brother, both crazy football fans, arrived and began congratulating Andrew and bombarding him with questions about the game. Pippa wanted to smack both of them on the head, but she held back. Luckily, her mother intervened, dragging Victor and Josh away. We'll wait for you in the car, she said with a faint smile. Unfortunately for Pippa, she still couldn't have a quiet conversation with Andrew because her friends arrived. She had no choice but to introduce them, just Zach and Connor since Kara and Lauren had already met Andrew. Tell him what you were thinking during the game, Zach whispered with a grin to Connor, who quickly shut him up. Do you want me to end up in the hospital? Connor muttered, recalling Andrew's tackles. The rivals' players had stayed down on the ground for several seconds until their teammates helped them up. Well, see you at my house, Pippa said, realizing that having a quiet conversation here was impossible. They said brief goodbyes. Andrew returned to his parents, where he learned from Haley that she would be going to Pippa's house too. Well, one more person won't make a difference, Andrew thought, shrugging as he got into the back seat of the car with Leonard and Howard. Claire made sure to follow the car and drive Haley. She much preferred this gathering of semi-grade friends over a party full of older, popular students. You can read 15 chapters in advance on my Patreon. Link. Web links at trian.com/nave07. To be continued.